Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Mindshare Podcast. This show is sponsored by Kits Keep In Touch Systems, a two-time international award-winning marketing suite for sales professionals, as well as REM Real Estate Magazine, Canada's premier monthly magazine for real estate professionals. Learn more about our sponsors by visiting my site, mindshare101.com. You can also visit both of these companies here at Realtor Quest. Either option, be sure to visit mindshare101.com, download your free copy of my book, The Ultimate Marketing Bundle, as well as learn more about our one-to-one coaching. Today's episode is being recorded live on site at the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board's annual Realtor Quest Conference and Trade Show here at the Toronto Congress Centre. This is a special edition. Throughout his career, he has proven himself an award-winning realtor as a multiple recipient of Johnston & Daniel's most prestigious awards for sales achievement. He's also been recognized by a number of industry publications, including REP Magazine, which selected him as one of the real estate industry's young guns, representing the top 100 realtors in Canada under 35, and Toronto Stories, who selected him as the Realtor of the Year for 2017. He has been personally involved in more than $1 billion of real estate transactions throughout his career. He's an active member of a number of industry-leading organizations and is actively involved in organized real estate, participating on many industry boards, committees, and task forces at TREB, CREA, ORCF, and RECO. He is currently the chair of the Governance Bylaw Task Force, the Professional Advancement Task Force, and he is the vice chair of the Realtor Quest Task Force. Also with us today, he is a career real estate executive with over 30 years of experience and the broker of record of Century 21 Leading Edge Realty, which he founded in 1993, which has since grown to encompass 9 offices serving the Greater Toronto Area. He has always taken an active interest in the challenges and opportunities faced by the industry, and he enjoys sharing his knowledge and expertise as TREB's Director at Large. He is currently the chair of the Executive Committee. Joining me on this episode of the Mindshare Podcast are TRREB Past President, Mr. Kevin Crigger, and TRREB President, Mr. Paul Barron. Gentlemen, welcome to the Mindshare Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thanks for having us. Great to be here, David.
You know, I was just saying to you guys before we went on air that I've been attending this show for close to 20 years, and it is absolutely exciting that we're finally back here at Realtor Quest here in Toronto. Tell us, what are some of the highlights of the show? What can people expect to see this year?
Yeah, so just sat through Billie Jean King, which was an amazing presentation where she went over her career and the things she's done for women in the sports industry and really women in general. So it was very, very uplifting.
It's a pretty incredible collective of speakers. Certainly, the trade show is always a huge part of Realtor Quest, and I think this year is probably the largest we've ever seen. So it's just great to see everyone back in person and sort of networking together, and I think it will be the biggest Realtor Quest probably in history.
You know, I would tell you some really exciting stuff going on. And for everybody tuned in right now, and I will echo this by saying that if you haven't attended Realtor Quest and you are in the industry, you're missing out. This is the largest event of its type in the country and a must visit. We've been here all day today so far. We're going to be back at it again tomorrow. Tickets can be purchased online. They can be purchased on site. And we know that, TREB Realtor Quest at the Toronto Congress Centre is open right now, so I encourage everybody to come and join us. Now,
let me just add,
go for it.
It's free for realtors, so there is no charge for realtors to attend.
Oh,
yeah, so
see, that's something I wasn't aware of.
Well, that's why I'm making you aware.
So yeah, no, that's good. This is good information to have, and this is one of the reasons why people need to be here. And I'll tell you, having been to a lot of the different conferences across North America. Mm-hmm. Biggest in Canada, and probably almost the second biggest we've got across North America.
Oh, most definitely, and it's a member benefit for TREB members. It's an ideal opportunity for them to participate in the annual general meeting that we had this morning and really network with their colleagues and obviously do some of the professional development courses we have here. It's a great opportunity for them to also see a number of the new products and services that TREB's launching.
It's really exciting. I hope that the people that are not here yet will be here, and I hope that everybody that's here is having a great time. I know the feedback so far has been awesome. Mm-hmm. So nice job, gentlemen. Yep, very nice job. Sure. Let's jump into some more important topics of a different type, okay? And I don't want to downplay Realtor Quest because we are super excited to be back. Current market. In the past 2 days, Career released numbers that surprised most people, essentially saying that the market is on fire. prices have gone up 100K. Demand continues to outpace supply nationally. Is the market back, or is this just hype?
Yeah, I think that the market really never left. You know, people took obviously a little bit of a fence sitting when interest rates went up, but there was just a massive amount of buyers that were looking for property across Canada and especially in the GTA. And the rates starting to level off and show signs that they maybe have peaked has got the majority of those people back out. So yeah, the market is absolutely on fire.
Well, and I think supply has always been a challenge in the GTA. And, you know, certainly despite the fact we had sort of a cooler period as people were sitting on the sidelines, nothing fundamentally has been done to increase supply. So as people step off of the fence, the supply challenges remain, and it certainly will be a driver of price going forward.
You know, it's interesting. Speaking with people and really the feet on the street. Is it a good market? Is it a bad market? There's a lot of mixed opinions about that. And somebody, it might have been John who actually said it on this show a number of weeks ago, but it's not good, it's not bad. It's a professionals market. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I liked that. And it's the same message that we're driving home to a lot of the folks that we're talking to is, if you want it, it's there. Mm-hmm. You got to work harder to get it. It's not maybe what it was a couple years ago, but at this point in time, if you're going to be a professional about it and do the work you need to do, make the calls, connect with the people, have the conversations, be here and network with people, there are opportunities out there.
Well, and the interesting part, looking at Mike Del Preti's presentation as well, the use of realtors is an all-time high. There's a reason for that. It's a market that lacks clarity to some degree. There are tons of micro markets that exist. So in talking about average price, average volume is one thing, but you have entry-level price points, you have the uber luxury market, you have everything in between, different housing classes and categories. And that's where working with a real estate professional in a market such as this is of paramount importance. And we're certainly seeing that. There's a reason that people choose to work with realtors, and it's really to get advice. Having access to market data is one thing, but having that professional expertise and experience in your corner, advocating on your behalf, is really priceless.
I couldn't agree more with that. I'm actually going to circle back to that in a little bit. I want to, as we close off, almost make sure that we've got a good message. But I'll provoke that in a few moments. Okay. Now, coincidental to the question about current market, inflation numbers in April are up. We know that almost over the past 24, 48 hours, we've seen economists saying that instead of a rate cut in June, we might actually see a rate hike in June. And so instead of things going down, we might see them go up. We seem to be in some really crazy times right now. Can the market sustain a rate increase, or is this going to force us the other way?
Yeah, so my belief is that we had a trend. So we had a year-long trend of the rates going up. Yep. And that trend has, halted to a certain degree. And a little bit of adjustments up or down, I don't think is going to change anything. I think that we have reached almost the top of that price, of that rate hike. And if it goes up another quarter, down another quarter, I don't think that's going to make a difference. I think that in the long run, we're going to see rates start to come down as we get to the end of this year and certainly into 2024.
And we do know that rates are not what they were in the late 80s, early 90s in double-digit territory?
Well, even beyond that, rates aren't what they were a couple of months ago. The reality is, with every rate hike, there was obviously an adjustment to the available negotiated rate. But if you follow the trend on what available rates are out there in the marketplace, there certainly has been downward adjustment in terms of what can be negotiated, in terms of what people are actually paying rate-wise. So the banks also have fewer transactions to fund. There are less transactions occurring in the market. We're coming out of a cycle where we had record-setting transactions. Banks built infrastructure for that. They've hired underwriters. They've built out credit departments. In the frenzy of the market, how many times do we run into issues with getting financing in time? And basically that infrastructure needed to be built. Now that they have that infrastructure internally, the banks need to compete for business. There's less business to go around. Therefore, I think you'll see modest adjustments in rate, but I don't necessarily think you're going to see, rate increases sort of dictating the final market price. I think there will be some movement in terms of what negotiated rates are based on each bank's portfolio of mortgage lending. and those who want to grow their portfolio will get more competitive. And we're certainly seeing that in negotiated rates now.
You know, it's funny. I've been a question I've been asking for some time now, and especially at the peak of the market that we had a couple of years ago there, when we got really high there, lots of multiples, lots of, a lot of bidding wars. My question kept being, where are people getting the money from? And it's something I've asked a lot of people about. Where is all the money coming from? And now that the question kind of parlays into, okay, they're finding it, fine, but what's going to happen in, say, 2024, 2025, and I don't expect any of us have a crystal ball to actually properly answer this, but this is just my own thinking. When renewal time comes up, and those people that went and did over asking, say, 2 years ago, really maxed themselves out, now we get into that renewal time of 3 to 5 years. What happens at that point? Like, do we see an adjustment coming at that time where maybe that's where prices begin to change because there are people that are going back for that renewal that can't actually do it?
So what Kevin touched on, where Kevin touched on earlier, the supply is the problem. So if you get a few more people that are running into an affordability problem with their renewals, it's not going to change the prices. We don't have enough. We have hundreds of thousands of properties short. So if we have, 10, 20,000 people that get into that problem, put their house on the market, it's needed supply. It's not going to adjust the value. So I don't see that happening.
And over and above that, times change. We're looking at the largest intergenerational transfer of wealth in our history. So when you talk about where's the money coming from, the reality is a whole host of different places. Certainly in a number of transactions that I've been involved in, I have clients who have done very well and have substantial savings. They're getting towards the end of their career, looking at options around downsizing, and they're looking at their children and sort of saying, when I die, they'll be very well taken care of. There's, money to transfer in the form of inheritance. But, if we look at the time value of money and I were to take some of that now and assist them in their purchase, what does that mean for them in terms of, their financial future? And you're seeing that occur really across the board. So I think I'm certainly not an economist, for full disclosure.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I think when you look at economists who are charting things based on past history and past understanding, I think there's been fundamental changes to elements of the market that aren't fully accounted for. And I think a lot of the sort of media coverage related to, renewals, major market changes, if you keep repeating the same narrative for long enough, maybe eventually it becomes true. But in the more than a decade I've been in the business, I've been hearing about this massive bubble that all of a sudden was going to burst and hasn't burst yet. The reality is supply and demand are the key fundamentals. There will always be demand in a place like Toronto and in the greater Toronto area based on, the opportunity presented to people who live here. And the reality is government, while they are certainly moving in the right direction, trying to affect supply, you can't build a house overnight. You can't put up a 25-story condo building in 6 weeks. These are multi-year changes. And with the pace of government, that pace tends to lag the market quite substantially.
This is an interesting one. So I was walking through Yorkdale the other day, and I bumped into a broker owner that we all know, nameless today. And we're having a conversation about it. He says, and I said, it's an okay market. He says, no, it's not. I said, well, what's the matter? He goes, David, he says, how can my parents, who live in a 3,000 square foot home, potentially downsize now? Where are they going? To a 500 square foot condo that's worth $1 million, $1 million plus? He says, and now we talk about the dollar part of that to say, well, are we really going to downsize to get out of a house that's actually going to cost me less to stay in than to move into a place that's going to be, I don't even want to say a quarter of the size? Are we seeing those people downsize? Are they just going to stay where they're at? And now we look at the transactions and think, is that part of what's holding us back from getting the people moving or downsizing? And then from the money that they might have because of that to be able to hand down to children?
Well, I think there's definitely a gap in the market from an overall supply perspective. But when you also look at the sort of needed supply in, a previous period of time, people would go from, a larger home to potentially a bungalow, smaller home, and then maybe affect their way to a condo or an apartment. The reality is, based on all of the associated government charges and fees related to a real estate transaction, we have double land transfer tax in Toronto. All of those things affect people's ability to move.
Yeah.
And it's all of these sort of unintended consequences that are sort of coming to roost now. It's incredibly expensive to build new housing units in the city of Toronto.
Yep.
Bill did an incredible study that effectively $150,000 approximately of every new condo unit is actually government charges and fees. So, that's a massive barrier to creating market housing. And I think the reality of what the typical sort of home movement cycle would be over time, people are going to stay in their properties far longer based on the transactional cost of making that move, and that keeps large supply out of the market. We have tens of thousands of empty bedrooms throughout the city of Toronto, and they're largely empty because there are so many hurdles to making a move to that next property that it doesn't make financial sense for many people.
And that's the same thing I would say, because I look at the property that I own and think to myself, to go and upsize, like talk about the upsize of the mortgage is just exponential, right?
Yeah. So we had a roundtable with the Minister of Housing, the Shadow Minister of Housing, and it seems like the government keeps trying to do things like foreign buyer ban and really putting Band-Aids on the problem. So if the problem is supply, then let's cut the HST. Let's cut the development charges. And this is what came out of this roundtable that we did. And this message went loud and clear to him to take back to Queen's Park, because that is what is going to make the difference, right?
It's all cost.
Yeah.
We've got people that are struggling right now, and it is what it is. But groceries are gas, right? It's just it's a different time. And we know that shovels in the ground has been an ongoing topic of discussion. And just this past week, the government said that new home builds are up. As of maybe a week ago, we knew that there was a trend of home builds being down. So I guess maybe part of this is, what's the real story? Are we up? Are we down? And maybe the bigger question is, are shovels in the ground the simple solution for all of this stuff?
I think shovels in the ground are definitely one element of the solution. Certainly looking at as-of-right opportunities in existing communities for intensification that's respectful of the overall community is a key element. So if we depend exclusively on large-scale developers to bring supply to market, I think we're incredibly limited. If we empower every homeowner in the province to look at opportunities for intensification on their existing property, I think that gives you a much larger spectrum of people to work with. And I think it also reflects the very localized nature of development. Canada is not the easiest place in which to bring housing to market. Financing is incredibly tight. We're obviously a highly regulated housing market, which I think is a huge positive, but government really will be the biggest player in how housing supply is affected. And unfortunately, it's going to have to come from not only removal of financial barriers, but also speed. The process of attempting to apply for development application and rezoning, could take as long for a small townhouse development that's infill as it could for a large condominium tower. And that's not realistic. And it certainly doesn't incentivize small-scale development. And we really need all hands on deck across all spectrums of the housing market, really to bring supply in all areas.
Yeah. I think also the officials that are dealing with planning and zoning, they always seem like they're saving something by keeping things small and keeping the height of the buildings down. And the reality is that there's markets that take 5-6 years in order to get a development through. We had some meetings that we were doing across the city and talking about Milton being one of the fastest right now, and they said that they can get things done in 8 months. 8 months sounds like a lot of time to me. They were leading the pack. Yeah. But these other places where, we need to solve it today, and it takes 5 or 6 years to get approvals, that's not going to work. So we need to have that dealt with, and then the financing dealt with. I think those are two big points.
I know, speaking of the financing, and earlier this week, I think it was TREB was in a discussion about increasing the supply while creating affordability. I think I got my timelines right. It was earlier this week on Monday, I believe. What did we learn about the increasing supply and how it can have a positive impact on affordability? I just want to jump on that a little bit deeper. Is there anything that we can look forward to make it a reality? Is there anything that we know about, that we learned about, maybe that we've... I know it's loaded, and there's so much out there, and I almost have somewhere I want to go right after that to kind of piggyback on that, because I think that there's certain things that we have zero control over.
Yeah, so my belief is that we're not going to see supply at a level that's going to cause the prices to go down. I don't believe, right? And I think that's just the reality.
Right.
But we still need supply.
Right.
We still need the homes. There's people that need a place to stay.
And there's certainly been positive movement. It may seem glacial to most of us, but when have we had a federal election where housing supply was a key ballot box issue? Never. We then had a provincial election where building homes was a key conversation across all party lines. And I think, in the municipal area, which is where housing's most easily affected, because that's where the shovels actually go into the ground, we're certainly seeing a commitment, and we're seeing incentives from different levels of government for municipalities to start cutting that red tape. Everything starts with a single step. And I think we've seen a number of very positive steps forward. The reality is none of them are going to move at a speed that we feel excited about, but at least it's sort of pointed in the right direction. And I think really organizations like the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, the Ontario Real Estate Association, the Canadian Real Estate Association, along with Build and their sort of partners throughout the industry, really have done a great job in advancing the narrative, making it sort of more commonplace so the consumer really understands some of the fundamental pieces that are lacking in bringing that supply. But, we all have to get involved. And it's very easy for individuals to sort of decry the cost of home ownership. But speak with your vote. Call your local officials, call government, reach out to ministers, reach out to those who represent your interests, and explain to them in a very personal way how lack of action for generations has created the current constraint we're in, and we need to find a much faster solution to get out.
It's interesting, because I was going to say, is there a timeline for any of this? And we know that it's been a constant conversation, but the deeper thought about it says, does anybody really have control over a private industry timeline? Right? Like, builders are builders. You decide you want to build, or you decide you're not going to build. Maybe you look and say the material's too much. I'm not going to go and do it right now. And now, if we look at it and say government gets involved, what do? They force your hand to go and put shovels in the ground? Do they force it, or do they support it? How do we push this along when, again, it's private industry?
Well, it's about money, right?
It's always about money.
It's about, there's no builder that's going to build a project that's going to get a loss. They're not going to build at a loss. They don't do that. They're business people.
Right.
So if they can't build at a profit, then we need to have government intervention to assist that. Take away the land transfer tax, take away the HST on new home purchases. Those are things that they can actually do that will have a difference. The other thing I was going to say earlier is that we talked at the board level for 7 or 8 years on the supply issue, where nobody picked it up and talked about it. We've been talking about it for 8 years.
Yeah.
And it's only really on the last couple of years that everybody's saying, oh yeah, it's the supply. Yeah, we got a supply issue. So maybe we need to talk louder or carry a bigger stick. I don't know what it is.
If we're putting this together right now, it sounds like, to the suggestion that was just made, go speak to your local people in government, push the envelope, and continue to push the agenda. And as we continue to push that agenda, does it climb its ranks? Mm-hmm. Do they truly hear us? And now maybe they can go ahead and start to assist the builders in getting more shovels in.
But also in your conversation around private industry, I don't believe that developers intentionally develop slowly. I think if you speak to developers, their biggest concern is really the speed at which they can move forward. Right. So if you look at costs occur a number of ways. There's obviously taxes, which we're all very familiar with. But for a developer, they buy a piece of land. Typically it's financed. There's some form of mortgage there and a monthly cost associated with carrying it. The longer they carry that land, generally at a very high rate of interest, the higher their cost basis becomes.
Yeah.
So there's a definite time value to money conversation.
Well, they want to build as fast as they can.
Absolutely. And I think where the opportunity exists is for government to start acting like private industry. So when you look at problems in the private sector, companies work through them. They collaborate with others in the industry, they bring in partners, and they work collaboratively to get things done. The challenge is government often works in silos, and there's no collaboration between the varying levels of government. And, obviously there's changes in government at various levels, the players change, the relationships change, but unless there's a true coming together of all three levels of government, that will be the real sort of catalyst in change.
What would be an action step that we could do collectively then to make that happen? Is that what, did we just basically put that out there and say, go speak to your local people and push this?
Well, and I think it's not just speaking to them, it's figuring out who is house friendly, who is build friendly, and get out to the polls and vote. We have a mayor election in Toronto. Who is the right candidate? I don't know if we're going to say our candidate choice on here. I'm not going to do that. But there is some that we have listened to that seem to be going in the right direction. And then there's others that may be leading in the polls and are not going in the right direction. Well, so that's a challenge.
And there's some that are incredibly concerning. The reality is housing can't carry all costs. So as an industry, we obviously have municipal property taxes. Then there was this advent of this secondary tier of land transfer tax. And the challenge is once government gets used to the revenue, it's not as though that's sort of turning back. Look at the GST conversation. So I think in looking at proposals, looking at platforms, it's important for consumers to understand that basically housing cannot fund all things because it creates additional costs and barriers to housing.
It's an important topic, and I think that it's one of these ones that I think if we've labeled that out today and said, go have the conversations, figure out who's on the right side of this thing, we got to keep pushing the envelope, but we've got to do this as an industry. And it's got to be people not just going, well, I'll let him do it or I'll let her do it. We've got to do this collectively to be able to make this happen. Watching the clock, I'm going to switch gears here. And pardon me, I want to add in as well that we do know that TREB is doing a lot to push the envelope on this. That's one thing that, again, when we listen and we learn, what is TREB doing about this? Because people are asking those questions. We know that there's a lot of different initiatives happening. We know you guys are having the conversations. You're lobbying people. You guys are there. You're involved in the conversations. This thing, we're trying to push it through. But again, it takes a whole bunch of different silos to get them moving. And we know that in of its own is a difficult challenge. Now, switching gears here. Earlier this year, TREB had announced its amalgamation with BDAR. I know
integration with
integration.
BDAR. Yes,
I know. Just the other week, Durham, Quinte. Thank you for the correction there. Northumberland's Quinte and Durham, they amalgamated.
They did
to become a Ontario MLP partner board.
Yes, so we're seeing a lot of change in the industry, speaking of collaboration, where boards and associations are sort of looking at how best to serve members. And looking at Durham, Quinte, and Northumberland coming together, you have a collective membership of 2,000 realtors spread across a sizable geographic territory with an existing staff team, and really bringing staff together from all of those associations to serve a collective membership from a couple of service locations certainly represents a ton of opportunity in terms of bringing additional professional development.
One of those benefits, exactly.
Well, bringing additional professional development courses to the table, speaking specifically around government lobbying and advocacy. For a lot of smaller boards and associations, it's incredibly challenging to have the resources to have a robust government relations program. The Toronto Real Estate Board, the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board obviously benefits from a sizable GR department who are incredibly skilled in the area of lobbying and also affecting change with government. And as smaller associations come together to collaborate and create value for their membership, I think local advocacy is one of the key components of local board service. And I think in coming together and having the added resources of a larger collective membership, a number of these associations are going to do incredible things.
There's a lot of connectivity, if we call it.
Mm-hmm. And I think actually the government should take notice of this, because we've got multiple boards working together for efficiencies. This is what we need from the government in the housing. I know you were changing gears,
right in there,
changing gears, but I want to revert it back to that, because this is what we need, and we need lower taxes, right? We need them to be more efficient, and that's certainly what needs to be done in the real estate industry. I think that there is probably over $20 million a year in Ontario being spent on dual memberships.
Interboard fees.
Interboard fees, right? Like, it's ridiculous. So we need these amalgamations help to solve some of that problem, and hopefully eventually all of it.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, as we talk about these, I know back in October, CREA had announced its intention to adopt a Realtor Cooperation policy, voted on again at the 2023 AGM recently. Mm-hmm. What can we share about this? Is there anything that we can share? What do we need to know? How can we apply it? Maybe surface level, maybe there's some depth there. I just thought I'd bring that up and touch on that for a moment.
Sure. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview. One is that it starts in January of 2024. That's when it's implemented. And, really they maybe didn't clearly communicate what was happening, right? I've heard this talked about, a ban on exclusives. There's no ban on exclusives, right? Exclusive listings can still be taken by anybody. What we've done is we've said we're in a real estate collective. And if we're going to market properties publicly to many, then we're going to put it on the MLS within 3 days of starting that marketing. That's the bottom line. And it really helps when you look at the inventory. People keeping inventory to themselves when there's a shortage is a problem. Yeah. So it really is solving a lot of problems. We actually had a question today on that where somebody didn't like it, but most of the times they don't like it because they don't understand it. And, that's a challenge.
That's where you just got to ask questions sometimes, right?
Exactly.
Well, and really, the goal of Realtor Cooperation policy effectively is not only focused to realtors, but also the consumer. There have been a whole range of practices, especially in the sort of height and frenzy of the market, where, properties were shown as coming soon. People assumed they were coming soon somewhere. And then you'd see the coming soon rider and sold marked across the bottom.
You didn't have any time to do anything.
No, and consumers really felt conflicted and felt that they really didn't understand what was going on. This sort of sets clear benchmarks, one-to-one marketing of a property where a client chooses to list exclusively, understanding what that means, because it is really a limited marketing mandate, and that you're not providing exposure on the largest platform available, which is the multiple listing service, and that's the right of homeowners. Homeowners can choose for a whole host of reasons to list exclusively, but they should understand what their options are. Right. And through that process, a realtor can serve a client incredibly well based on one-to-one marketing, because often exclusives are the option of choice for sellers who are looking for a discrete transaction. For a whole host of reasons. It may be celebrity, which is the one that everyone talks about. And all of a sudden, everyone's representing celebrities. I don't know if you've noticed that. But over and above that, for corporate transfers and a whole bunch of other reasons, people may choose to take a quieter approach to the sale of their property. And this policy certainly understands that and provides a framework for it. Okay.
Now, fraud. Been an unfortunately common issue in real estate lately. Who knows what sparked all this stuff, but there's also the issue of ethics, and I know that's something that John and I have these sidebars about a lot. We know that TREB, again, is always working to make this an even better industry to work in. Mm-hmm. We know that. We also know that phase 2 of TRESA was delayed. Can we share more on the topic of TRESA and even how TREB is working with RECO on this topic? What does everybody need to know, maybe in short form? Because I know there's a lot that they need to know, but just from a highlight, maybe.
Sure. So I think that the first thing that we need to know is that there is no launch date, right? It was supposed to be April 1st. That got postponed, and there's stories of January 1st, 2024 as it coming out. And really, it is about trying to have a system and a process so that the consumer thinks the offer process is fair. I mean, that's a big part of TRESA. And yeah, I think that they're going in the right direction. They have consulted with the different players in the industry, CREA, OREA, and with TREB and other boards. And I think that we're moving in the right direction. Again, there's lots of misunderstanding. And I think that we as a board are doing some important things to deal with technology to manage those new rules. So we're trying to get out in front of it and actually build technology with partners to provide our members with the ability to follow those rules in an easy fashion. Right?
And I think a big part of TRESA's introduction really is modernizing the landscape from a regulatory framework. The Real Estate and Business Brokers Act of 2002, I don't think anyone would suggest that the world has remained what it was in 2002. And with the advent of technology...
I don't know if we're the same as 2022.
True. Very, very true. Yeah. But I think a big part of it is, looking at practice within the industry, looking at challenges presented by current regulation, and looking at ways to ensure that consumer protection is paramount, but also that consumer choice is respected. So there's obviously been discussion of a more transparent offer process at the option of a seller. There's also discussion around a change in agency relationship, talking about unrepresented parties versus clients, looking at designated agency, where a brokerage through two individuals can represent buyer and seller and provide a full slate of services to them, and not be in multiple representation if they're the designated representatives. So I think there's a lot of encouraging thought that's gone into TRESA. Its delay, I think, was very much warranted.
Okay.
And I think really has fostered a great deal of additional discussion around opportunities. TREB has advocated for a number of changes. Designated agency is a concept that TREB has promoted for many, many years. And, certainly we look forward to seeing what the end regulation looks like. But it certainly has been quite a collaborative process as of late, and hopefully remains so through to final drafting of the legislation.
Now, you just you brought up technology. Mm-hmm. And as we talk about tech and PropTech, first, in a very short form question, is real estate an online tech business, or is this a relationship business?
It's a people business.
It's a
and very much focused to relationship.
Business.
Just want to put that out there for everybody tuned in right now. It is a people business, so no matter what access we have to technology, it's always about people, and that's why, again, Realtor Quest is such an awesome time right now, because we are finally back with people. Now, the extension of that becomes, what can we highlight briefly, again, just watching time, on what TREB is currently working on, maybe about to roll out? What specifics can we highlight for everybody, or just one of those things that's exciting we want people to know about?
Well, certainly I think the Realm platform, which is one of the three front ends of choice that are available to TREB members to access the MLS data, it is a mobile-first technology product that's been really developed by realtors for realtors, and certainly looks to provide a cohesive environment for realtors to work from. The reality is there's tons of tech out there, but who wants 35 different apps on their phone, and who wants to leave one program to go to another? The idea is to create an ecosystem for TREB members and members of the Ontario Multi-List platform from other boards and associations who have access to a comprehensive suite of services that enhance their ability to provide service to consumers. Skyslope Offers, who has a booth here and is doing a number of demos, we've worked really closely with them to create a truly integrated product. 40 of our fields from the MLS system have been mapped to their Forms product, so realtors aren't duplicating and re-entering data over and over and over again. The technology exists, and it's high time that MLS providers really embrace that technology and provide a true solution to realtors. And, certainly as PropTechs, that is our goal.
So, with all this technology then, how does the realtor remain relevant with all this? Because again, we're seeing a ton of apps, a ton of different things we can do. I believe we've just said it's a people business. We've watched many other industries disappear because of technology. I think, and we said this off the top of the show, it's going to continue to need the professionalism and the knowledge and the communication from the realtors. Anything to add on to, like, in terms of remaining relevant, or maybe a message to everybody about that? When it comes to tech and the embracing of it?
Yeah. So I think that it's agents that embrace technology that will lead the industry. So the technology on its own is not going to.
Right.
You know, we listened to somebody today that talked about these funded companies that are spending and losing money for multiple years, and this next best thing, this next technology for mortgage approvals is going to create another $1.5 billion, and then they don't work, and they continue to lose money year after year because people making the biggest decision of their life, for the most part, need to have someone to hold their hand. I don't want to sound corny,
but I got to say, I want to be able to reach across that table.
It is really to hold your hand and guide you. There's so much information out there, David, that we can't digest it ourselves. We need that assistance and that professionalism to help us digest it and make sure that we're going in the right direction and look at what the options are. Right?
I couldn't agree more with that. I think for me, I would never, ever trust the biggest transaction of my entire life to a machine. There's no way. I want somebody who understands what's going on. So that takes me into this part as we start to wrap here. There's a narrative out there, right? The market, the this, the that, it's not really moving. I believe, and I'm curious to know what you guys think, I believe that as an industry, if we individually all come together to start to combat that narrative on the negativity that we're hearing through the media, be it mainstream, be it social, and we each individually start to communicate properly with our clients, we can begin to combat the narrative, the negative narrative.
Well, I think the first step of that is moving our thought process from us being an industry to a profession. Because that, I think, is really the differentiator. The automotive industry is one thing, the real estate profession is another. I think the fact that we have incredibly personal relationships with our clients is really a key factor of success.
Absolutely.
You need to understand at very fundamental, incredibly personal things to really provide advice, guidance, and direction to your client throughout their sort of home ownership journey, whatever it may be. And I think really pivoting to that concept of a profession and really focusing to what the true value proposition is that we as professionals provide to our clients. And then obviously collaborating with an entire network of professionals, I think will ensure that we remain at the heart of every transaction for many, 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 many years to come.
And so I would add to that, when we look at the media, they're always trying to sensationalize things. And really, you're not going to make it
again enough to start to believe.
Yeah. And then we saw graphs today where the market is bad. They changed the scale, and everything was low. And then let's change the scale, and now it's good. It's the same thing, right? So the idea is that the media always wants to sensationalize things. So it is that one-on-one kitchen meetings with the realtor, where you're really understanding the market, and real estate is a location market, and it can be so specific to an area that it's got nothing to do with what's happening in general. So it is that one-on-one with an agent. That's why the industry exists. That's why 90% of the people are still using a realtor when they transact in real estate.
I would say to you, I think that it is the one-on-one conversation. I think that communication is paramount. The more we can communicate the narrative and clear that up with people and answer questions, use active listening skills, the more we can start to have that one-on-one kitchen table conversation, and we can begin to change their narrative. To the comment about professionalism, would love to have you guys back on a show. We're going to dive into that topic alone, and we're going to make sure that we can raise that level as well together. As we sign off, any parting words that you two want to share to everybody tuned in right now?
You still have another full day of Realtor Quest. Yes. Please come out tomorrow. The Convention Center, 650 Dixon Road, free for members of the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. Come on and see us.
You are either watching us live here at Realtor Quest, you are listening to this recording on one of your favorite podcast platforms. We just interviewed the president and past president of the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for the time today on the Mindshare podcast. I want to encourage everybody, go over to mindshare101.com, grab your free copy of the Ultimate Marketing Bundle, a 31-page ebook packed with a 90-day social media content calendar, all of it to help you build more mindshare so that you can get more market share. A reminder as well that if you want to talk about personalized one-to-one coaching and in-person keynote talk for your upcoming event or ongoing virtual training, get in touch with us, set up a consultation call, learn more about what you're looking to achieve and how we will help you do just that. Also, make sure to get registered for our small group mastermind taking place May 29th and 30th in Toronto. It's going to be 2 powerful days of collaboration, networking, and problem solving. Don't forget to leave a review of this podcast at www.ratethispodcast.com/Mindshare101. Connect me on Facebook at Mindshare101, on Instagram at David Greenspan 101. I want to thank Kids Keep in Touch Systems. Be sure to come visit us at booth 415 here at Realtor Quest. I also want to thank REM Magazine for sponsoring the Mindshare podcast. Be sure to visit our site and learn more about all of our sponsors as well as everything we have to offer here at Realtor Quest. Gentlemen, once again, thank you. This has been another episode of the Mindshare podcast. Thank you for tuning in.